What's up, YouTube? Today I'm going to do a quick build guide for all of the casters, including Shinbi. So basically going to give you 7 builds, one for each character that I would normally go in most of my games, and the reason why I would go most of them, go those builds in my games, in the order that I would go those items. So to start, we're going to basically talk about Countess. Countess, I generally go Soul Bearer on. It just gives you some good lifesteal in team fights, and it gives you a little bit of a health shield. You can actually activate this during your ultimate, which can actually just give you a fat amount of healing, and then you get a little shield so you can stay alive a little longer. Also increases your movement speed. It's a little really deceptive on how strong that can actually be, especially on a character like Countess. Being able to get that extra movement speed to follow after people and then get a Q off into some damage can be really nice. So generally what I go, sometimes I'll go Obelisk on Countess if I'm playing like jungle specifically, or I'm in a matchup where I don't think I'm going to need the extra lifesteal and shielding. If you can get Obelisk to like 30 stacks or so, you can pop Obelisk, then dash in. It's pretty much a guaranteed auto attack, and you just can one-shot people immediately without having to even ult somebody. The next item I usually go on Countess is Combustion. The reason I go Combustion on Countess is because it can be really hard to build the next item, which would be Megacosm. It can be very difficult to build Megacosm on your first back, just because the tier 2, or not tier 2, the tier 1 Potent Staff can be pretty hard to get. It's a 1200 gold item, as opposed to the options that you have for Combustion, which would be a Scepter and or a Codex / a blue mana Spirit Bead, which would be the items that you go into Combustion. If you have the ability to, let's say you get a First Blood or it's just a slow game and you can go Megacosm first, you would generally go Megacosm before you go Combustion and then not go Combustion. But usually you're not able to do that because Countess is pretty weak early game. It's going to be kind of hard to get some CS and stuff. So generally my build would look like this, where I go Combustion, and then I come back and finish the Megacosm. The reason you finish the Megacosm is just good tank shred. It gives you some burst, increases with Combustion, just very nice item. And then it also stacks your next item, your third item, which would be World Breaker. The reason you go World Breaker is it increases your damage just by 16% after 4 hits of magical damage, which might seem kind of hard to do, especially on a character like Countess. But it procs off of Megacosm as well. So if you hit one ability, Megacosm then hits 3 times, which then gives you a full World Breaker, which means your next ability will do 16% increased damage. This also increases your base numbers, which can make you do a lot of damage, and very, very deceptive on how strong it actually is and how much power it actually gives you when you're casting your abilities. Then fourth, I would go Costiga. It's just a percent pen item, lets you hit tanks. Is pretty effective against squishies too. Not as effective as Flat Pen maybe, but it does give you a decent damage increase. Also gives you some mana regen when you're below a certain threshold, which can be pretty nice, especially in late game team fights or more extended engagements. And then lastly, we finish with an Oblivion Crown. Oblivion Crown is just flat damage increase, flat percent power increase, not damage increase. It's a little different. You get 15% power increase on top of 120 power, and then you also get the secondary passive, which is after you hit somebody with a magical damage from an ability, for the next 3 seconds, you actually do 10% increased magical damage to that person, which on a character like Countess, you're a very bursty character. If you dash in, you proc Oblivion Crown, do 8% of their HP with Oblivion Crown, and then you do 10% more damage for 3 seconds, which on a character like Countess, again, you just burst. It's just a 1, 2, 3, pop all your abilities, can really just obliterate somebody for sure. This is generally my Countess build. The last 2 items really don't change that much for any character. In fact, the last 3 items don't really change that much for any character. So I'm just going to leave those there for now. I might switch them out if I get to a character where I'm going to switch them. But for the most part, these 3 items just don't switch too much. You generally build these on almost every character, with a couple exceptions. The next character we're going to talk about is the Fae. The Fae is, again, another mid laner where you just kind of burst people. You have a little bit of a weaker early game. You have a decent fight in the lane, but you don't really do anything else outside of that. You're very gankable, so it's pretty hard to play up. Your late game's pretty decent, but you get countered by stuff like Reclamation and a lot of cleanses like Epoch, Brutalax, Liberator, stuff that's built pretty consistently. Can really mess with your potential, and you're basically playing as a 3 ability character in the late game. But she could be pretty strong if you can position well and get some good engagements and maybe some, catch people off guard with some flash ults or something like that. Could definitely be impactful. Generally, I go Epoch on her just because you get to pop your right click and sit in Epoch for 2 seconds. You can right click E somebody, Epoch, and then E at the end of the Epoch, and you can get a lot of power off of that, a lot of damage. You're very squishy, no mobility, so if you get got on, it can help you stay alive. There are times where I would go Obelisk on her. Again, if I'm trying to bully like a Countess or something, where even if I Epoch, I'm probably dead anyways. I might go like Obelisk to try to punish it. Or if I'm against, again, like a Gadget character that can't really punish me for not going Epoch. Those are generally the two situations where I wouldn't. But for the most part, you generally always go Epoch. It's just good, especially if you're into a matchup like Gideon or Shinbi or something like that, where just getting, like, being able to stay alive for like 2 seconds can really make a big difference. And then I usually on Faye, I always go Megacosm. It's pretty easy to sustain for Megacosm, the tier 1. I would generally avoid going Combustion. She gets a little bit less value from it than some of the other mages. Similar to like Gadget almost, where a lot of your damage is dot damage, so having Combustion doesn't actually really increase your damage too much. So I generally like to go Megacosm into Wraith Leggings. Wraith Leggings is a very strong item, increases your damage when they're low, good flat pen option, lets you hit squishes very hard, also gives you some survivability with the extra movement speed that it gives you, also stacks with your passive movement speed, which could be really nice, and just overall a really good item. And this is generally the build I go on a lot of characters, where I go Epoch into Megacosm, Wraith Leggings, World Breaker, Costco, Oblivion Crown. And this is the highest damage build that you can have, minus Epoch. But out of these 5 items that you can build, not including your starter, this will give you the most damage in one rotation of abilities that you can get on any character with any build. The next character we're going to talk about is Gadget. Gadget I do a little bit of a different build on. Generally, I will go Soul Bearer because you go True Silver in the second slot. Gadget is the only character where I would actually build a Zerkor on. A Zerkor, while it does give you a good amount of power, is actually less damage than the build that I was just talking about when you get to 5 items. The reason you go a Zerkor on Gadget, though, is because you have very low cooldowns. You want to spam abilities. You're an ability spammer. You don't do a ton of damage on each ability, but you just want to keep proccing stuff. You want to keep proccing your abilities, and you want to keep doing damage to people. And then the other benefit to a Zerkor is that it increases the size of your Soul Bearer shield on top of your passive shield. So your passive gives you a shield based off of your maximum mana, and this also increases the Soul Bearer shield because it also increases off your maximum mana. So you get like double extra value from the Zerkor. And then True Silver also gives you a shield, which is kind of the whole point of the build, is you get 3 big shields, and you're very hard to kill. You get a lot of CC immunity from True Silver Bracelet, and late game you can be an absolute menace. Then you build Megacosm, because you kind of have to. It's a really strong item. And it also, again, stacks the World Breaker. You do skip Oblivion Crown with this build, which kind of sucks, but the amount of benefits that you get from these other items are just really strong. Again, you're a very tanky character with this build because you have a lot of shields. World Breaker adds on to that, giving you tenacity and HP. Can be very, very strong. You need to build Costiga for the pen. You just have to, it's non-negotiable. You have to build Costiga on every mage. But Megacosm, excuse me, very, very good. Again, stacks your World Breaker. Could proc this off your right click. You only have to hit 1 hit of it, and then you get a full World Breaker, and it's very, very strong. Very good poke, and very good at killing tanks. Next, we'll talk about Gideon. Gideon's pretty similar to Gadget. The only difference being you just don't go a Zerkor and you get Oblivion Crown last. Something like this, and you always go Soul Bearer because you want to keep the True Silver Bracelet alive as long as possible. You basically dash in, ult, your True Silver Shield goes off because you're ulting, and then you Soul Bearer on top of that. Now, in order to get through the True Silver Shield, they have to kill the Soul Bearer Shield. This gives you a very long duration of CC immunity, because as long as the True Silver Shield lasts, you are immune to CC, which means you can't get cancelled out of your ultimate, which generally means you're getting a full channel, and that's a lot of damage and a lot of control in team fights, as well as space creation. The reason you don't go a Zerkor is because, unlike Gadget, you don't get that much benefit because you don't get the passive shield. And this build will actually do more damage than if you have a Zerkor instead of Oblivion Crown. But again, you're not really benefiting from the passive. Whereas Gadget, you get the extra mana, which gives you a larger shield. Gideon doesn't have that, so I would rather just do more damage personally. Especially as more of a bursty mage. Gadget's not really a bursty mage. She's more of a poke mage. Gideon, you can really one-shot somebody, especially, once you get late game, once you get towards this Costiga, this Oblivion Crown. You can really just one-combo somebody, especially with your passive. So this is what I would go in Gideon. The next mage we'll talk about is Belica. Belica is pretty good. Pretty good. I would build pretty much the same thing I build on the Fae, with one caveat that I sometimes would go Combustion, depending on the way the game starts. I would also always go Epoch, unless I'm in a matchup where I want to bully them, such as, Belica and the Countess. I might go Obelisk to try to snowball. Once you get Obelisk, it's higher power to start than any of the other starter items. It gives you 35, and it scales infinitely. You get infinite power and the ability to one-shot somebody, especially off a knockup. You hit the knockup, throw the bomb, pop Obelisk, free auto attack because they're knocked up. You can really just one-shot somebody without even having to use your ultimate, and then still blast somebody with your ult later. Very, very good. You might say, oh, why don't you build a Zerkor? Well, a Zerkor, again, is less damage. Even if you replace any of these 5 items with a Zerkor, you will do less damage in one rotation of abilities. Now, as a burst mage, you want to do as much damage as you can in one rotation. And you might say, but a Zerkor gives you extra benefit because of Belica passive. The amount of power that you actually get from that is actually still less damage than you would get from this build. Now, the situational thing I would do with Combustion is similar to Countess, where if you're getting bullied in the early game and you are unable to get the the tier 2 spike for Megacosm, it is not what I want to do, where you get the tier 2 spike for Megacosm. If you can't get this potent staff on your first or second back and you don't think you're going to be able to on your second back, then I would just go into Combustion first and then go into Megacosm, and then late game you would sell Combustion for the Wraith Leggings. Now, if you're able to back for the potent staff because you're just having a chill game, then I just go Wraith Leggings second into the rest of this build, and then you will start to just pop people around the time you get Megacosm. You can start just one-shotting people. Wraith Leggings, it gets even better, and then late game you just start one-shotting after that. But pretty basic for most mages. Generally what I would like to go. And then lastly, we will talk about Shinbi. Oh, I forgot Howitzer. Howitzer is the same thing as Belica, basically. Again, same thing with the Obelisk, same thing with the Combustion. If you can back for the tier 1 potent staff, you go Megacosm. If you can't, then you just go Combustion here, and then you sell it for Wraith Leggings in the late game. If you have the ability to just get Megacosm first, then you just go Megacosm into Wraith Leggings. It's just more damage. Shinbi is one of the only characters that's a little different. Similar to Gadget, she kind of has a unique build where you could actually go pretty much any starter on her. Tempest is not great, but you can build it. You can build Epoch depending on the matchup. If I'm against the Fae, I like to build Epoch because she likes to ult you. You can immune the ult basically by just standing still. You can go Obelisk. I specifically like Obelisk when I'm playing her in jungle. Not really an early game bully character, so going Obelisk in general in lane can be kind of troll sometimes, but it is pretty fun if you want to try that out. Soulbearer is pretty good on her too if you like Soulbearer. They give you a little bit of different things. If you're trying to immune big combos like Fae ult, or maybe you're against a Steel and you don't want to get Steel comboed, something like that, then you might go Epoch. If you're against a character, like Gadget or something, where they're a little bit more poke heavy, or you don't have anything big to immune, then you can go Soulbearer and you can just be a menace in team fights. You just pop your Soulbearer, dash in, you can lifesteal a lot, and then you're very tanky because of the shield that it gives you. And then first item, I generally like to go Megacosm into Worldbreaker second, and then I like to get a Dreambinder in that third slot. The reason you do this is because these two give you tenacity together. You're a frontline mage, so it basically means you just reduce CC, as well as giving you a bunch of HP, and then the ability to slow somebody allows you to chase very easily, which can be really nice. The thing with Megacosm, it's just Megacosm, it stacks your Worldbreaker, and just makes you very, very hard to deal with. Very good poke character, so Megacosm is really good on characters that can poke. Again, Dreambinder just slows people, allows you to catch up. You can, if you're in a game where you want to be a little bit more bursty, go Wraith Leggings into Worldbreaker like you would on somebody like, like the Fae. You can go the Fae build, pretty much, minus the Epoch, going Soulbearer, or, Epoch instead. You can go this if you want to. I generally prefer to go something like this than get Dreambinder. I just like the extra HP, I like the tankiness, I like the tenacity. Just makes it very hard to lock you down, especially as a more frontline bruisery character. Sometimes if I'm in a lane where you can't get that tier 1 for Megacosm, I actually like to go into the Void Crystal that goes into Worldbreaker, and then come finish Worldbreaker, and then go Megacosm second. Something like this, depending on the matchup. And if you get forced to back early game, it could be really tough to get that 1200 spike if you're against something like Howitzer or Belica that can really bully you early game as a melee character. So generally, this is what it might look like if I'm against those matchups, but for the most part, I try to go Megacosm into Worldbreaker first. And then once you finish Megacosm, you can pretty much just W key anybody. If you get the ability to E somebody completely, especially with the buff that she recently got where your passive now stacks your ultimate, if you're level 6 at Megacosm, you can just dash on somebody, E, Q a couple times, and they're dead. And there's nothing they can really do about it unless they have Epoch. And if they're trading Epoch for your ultimate, that's fine for you. Next time your ultimate's up, they're dead. And it's just very, very strong on Shinbi, and this is generally what I would go on her. And then Dream Miner versus Wraith Leggings again. If you want to be a little bit more bursty and go that Fey build, you can do that too. It's a little bit more damage, but again, you are losing that tankiness and the tenacity. So if you get CC'd, you might just die off of it, since you're more of a frontliney character. But that's it for this guide. I just wanted to give people a quick explanation as to what I build and why I build it, since I get a lot of questions about that, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want more videos like this, or you want a different role potentially, you know, maybe off lane jungle builds or ADC builds or something like that, I can definitely try to get that information and make a video about it. Let me know in the comments, and I hope everybody has a good rest of their day, and thank you for watching.